Ready.
Here we go.
Right.
In 5, 4, 3.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Mike. Hey, morning, Ernest. How are you? Awesome. Ready to take in some knowledge. Just got in from a run, so I'm all sweaty and stuff. I wanted to make sure that I was here for your session. Awesome, man. Thank you for being here. Yeah, a million different time zones. We joke, Hannah, that I live on Hawaii time. I'm actually not far from you. I don't think I'm right outside of Philadelphia.
Where do you live, Mike?
Pittman, New Jersey.
Pittman? Okay, I know where that is. We're in southern Chester County, outside of Philly. Yeah.
Yeah. So we joke on the source team that I live on Hawaii time. I'm very rarely, like this time of day, usually like I still have a solid hour or two left of sleep in me.
Yeah, that's funny. Hey, Mike, Pittman's really near Rowan, right? I was just trying to remember where it is.
Yes, I live right down the street from Rowan.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a few friends that are in that like Mullica Hill area.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, everybody, it is the top of the hour and we're going to get started. So welcome. Thank you for being here, especially those of you who are on or near the West Coast, because I know it's very early for you. And my name is Mike Harris. And what you probably know about me, if you read my bio, is that I'm an ex-high stakes poker pro. I worked in the world of corporate finance for a decade. And essentially my entire life has been built around taking risks. And that's really like, that whole journey has done so much for me. Because I grew up in a really, really risk-averse house. My parents actually never, ever set foot on an airplane in their lives. That's how risk-averse they were. I mean, changing anything, not like buying a car, but changing anything, moving into a new home, doing anything that shook things up was a huge, huge risk, and it didn't happen in my house. So early on, I just started experimenting, mostly because I was bored. I was a really ADD sort of kid, and I experimented with everything, and that never died in me. I never lost my sense of wonder and my sense of wanting to experiment with things. And even though it sounds like the journey is linear, what you don't know about me is that is the messiest journey I could possibly ever imagine being on. I bounced in and out of college no less than 5 times before I finally graduated. Quit more jobs than I can count without any backup plan, without having another job, without having any plan of what was going to happen the next day, week, month, year. And on my way to becoming a poker pro, I decided I wanted to be a professional poker player. I was bartending at the time. I was working at this lousy chain Mexican restaurant, and one of the TVs in the bar had the World Series of Poker on. I thought, wow, that looks like a pretty good job. I think I'm going to do that. And between that and me officially making a living at poker was a little less than a year. And in that little less than a year, I went broke 11 times. And I don't mean I had $300 set aside and I'm okay with losing it and I lost it. No, this was, oh shit, I don't know how I'm going to pay the rent this month broke. Like pretty much every month on the month, conveniently right around rent time, as it turns out. And then everything eventually came together as I learned, as I grew, as I as I developed my resilience, everything just came together for me. And that journey transformed me into an extraordinarily high performer under pressure. I often tell people that I don't see risk and consequences and sacrifice the way most people do. It helps me as a coach, both leading my clients through their own risks and also just taking risks in the relationship, right? Everything from the turning up the flame in the conversation to client astonishment. I take probably bigger risks in client astonishment than anyone I know. Oftentimes that's something like doing something with a client that's on their bucket list. And a few times it's been dangerous and one time it was pretty perilous, and being a high performer under pressure saved my bacon that day. The other day I spoke with Rich, and he said to me, Mike, I want you to talk about what's behind making a $100,000 bet. And at first I was really, really afraid to talk about that. I was really afraid to talk about that because one, I almost feel like it's not relatable. But as I started thinking more and more about what it really meant, and in the context of how we lead when risk is high, when the stakes are really high, and everything's on the line for us or for our clients, I mean, it's so applicable. So when I thought about what goes into making a $100,000 bet, here's what came up for me. These three things felt really, really true to me. Number one, die before you go into battle. This is not exactly what Rich was talking about on Friday when he talked about being ready to meet God, but it is about being ready for whatever happens, whatever the outcome is. Knowing full well that nothing is promised in making a $100,000 bet. Nothing is promised. The only thing that is promised is that $100,000 is going to be out of your hands until it's settled. And dying before you go into battle takes a lot of pressure off the performance because it leaves the outcome out. It leaves the outcome out of the situation. So all that's left is for you to perform, for you to do what you got to do, for nature to run its course. Number two, commit all the way. Commit all the way. I was talking about this with someone the other day, and the thing about making any kind of bet is you don't get to make half the bet. You don't get to make a third of the bet. There's no spectrum of how much you're betting. You're betting or you're not betting. It's like a light switch. It's on or it's off. There's no dimmer. And you're either in or you're out. Make the call. And then play the game aligned with how you've made the call. I love that Yoda quote, do or do not. There is no try, right? There is no trying when you're making a bet. There's no try when you're betting on yourself, and there's no try in commitment. There's no try when you're fully committed. And number three, and this is, by the way, this one's the most important one. Don't let it be your last $100,000. I feel like there's kind of a stigma because when people think about when people think about playing poker for a living or any kind of gambling for a living, the idea is that the risks are always high. The truth is that for true professionals, the risks are always very calculated and they never, ever break you. Like, to be perfectly honest, the best professional gamblers and the best professional poker players, we're kind of dorks. We're constantly calculating and measuring and imagining where both the risks are and where the hidden edges are, where the hidden advantages are, where we can offset the risks. There is all sorts of room to mitigate the risks, but first and foremost, the best mitigant of risk is not betting every last thing you have. Not betting every last thing you have. And so that brought me to some other thoughts of just like, if you want to take more risks as a leader, and you want to lead your clients through more risk, here's some what I think are universal principles. Number one, like, if you're going to lead someone through risk, if you're going to lead a team through risk, if you're going to lead a client through risk, you have to start by leading yourself through risk, right? And this goes right back to the coaching adage: you can't take your clients any deeper than you've gone yourself. Cannot take your clients any deeper than you've gone yourself. And when you're trying to do that, when you're trying to lead someone through a risk that you're not assuming yourself, that's worn on your sleeve. Everyone you're trying to lead through that, they can see that. They may not know it in just those words, but there's that discomfort, that tentativeness around following you. And before you know it, if they see that you're not in it with them, you'll lose the team. You will lose your client's attention. You will lose their trust. So always lead yourself through risk to lead others through risk. Number two, oftentimes the risk of inaction outweighs the risk of action. Right? Or another way to say it is, in rich speak, the risk of the status quo, or the risk of the default life, outweighs the risk of the created life. And that, I think, in this room is self-explanatory. And just to expand on it for a sec, oftentimes when we see a high risk to action, we're not exploring what the upside is. We're not exploring the cost of inaction. We're not exploring like what kind of juice can we really squeeze out of this risk? Is there something that, if I look a little closer, I will find surprising about the upside? And number three, your risk mirrors your commitment, AKA leverage. Yes, thank you, David. Risk mirrors commitment. The best example I have of this is having gone broke 11 times. The risk was, yes, that I would struggle to pay my rent, that I would have to scramble to find a few $100s to cover my bills. And yet, at the same time, my commitment to becoming a pro was so high that it far, far outweighed a few $100s here and there. And that also allowed me to build up very, very rapidly, to build a large bankroll and play higher stakes and create even more money from that career, because I was so committed that no matter what happened, I was coming back. I was going to be back for more. I mean, no matter if I had to go back to bartending, if I had to go sell plasma, I was coming back. That's how committed I was. So commitment is a powerful offset to risk. And because pro poker players are dorks, and we're always thinking about what's it mean to take a quality risk? Like, what's it mean for it to be, we call it positive EV, positive expected value. If any of you here are probability and statistics aficionados, you'll be familiar with EV. And we're always thinking of what the most positive EV play is in the long term. Sometimes we're playing in the short term, but most of the time we're thinking, like, how is this going to play out in the long run? So how do you take more quality risks in the long run for yourself? How do you enable yourself to lead more people through these risks? For me, this is what it is. One, having pillars of stability. So things in your life that, one, are not negotiable, and two, don't change, right? Like, and mine are really, really simple. Mine is that I have a home. I don't really care what the home is, by the way. If it's my car, I'm okay with that. But mine is that I have a home, and that it looks the same, that I'm coming home to something that looks the same as I left it. That degree of continuity is really important to me. Two, that I do have a way to get around, so that I do have a car. Again, like, don't really care what the car is, but it's always been like, okay, I have freedom and I have stability. I have those two pillars in my life. And the third thing is that I have a place to put my energy when I lose. So I have people to talk to, or I have an activity that I can do where, okay, when I'm low, when I'm on the mend from a loss, like, I have somewhere to put the energy of that. Those might be different for you, but good exercise is just like, what are your non-negotiables in life? Like, what are the bare essential non-negotiables? And hold those as pillars of stability for yourself. Another pillar, so to speak, of taking quality risks is knowing the game you're playing. Knowing the game you're playing. Are you playing the long term? Are you playing the short term game? Are you playing committed? Or are you just dabbling? Are you playing for upside? Or are you playing to avoid downside? Whatever you're playing, by the way, whether it's long, short, upside, downside, committed, kind of committed, like, all of those are okay, but be really honest with yourself about it. Before I went through this journey, and I was a younger guy in my early 20s, and I bounced from job to job. I mean, like, I was kind of a screw up. I would describe myself as a guy who was like, I screwed a lot of stuff up. And the thing was that I would take risks in places I was just kind of wishy-washy committed. I was halfway there. And when that happens, it's easy to drop the commitment, and then you get all the downside of the risk. You lose whatever you've invested, your time, your money, your energy. Right? So know the game you're playing and risk accordingly. And have a plan for resilience. Right? Know how you're going to bounce back. You're going to lose sometimes. Everybody loses. My favorite songs ever is the Aerosmith song Dream On. And really early in the song, one of the lines is, you got to know how to lose to win. Or you got to lose to know how to win. You got to lose to know how to win. And to some degree, that's true. I don't think that you have to go through the ringer like some people do. That's certainly the hard way. And loss is inevitable. You're going to lose sometimes. And it's an awesome experience. Like, translated to leadership. Have a plan not only for individuals to tap into resilience, but how do you as a group tap into the collective resilience, right? How do you tap into the collective resilience of the team, of the organization, of the family? How do you tap into that? Create a plan for that. And resilience is such a key part of this because there are a couple ways that we can mitigate risk. There are a couple ways we can like kind of ease ourselves into risk. The one that we focus the most on is skill. And I don't want to diminish the importance of skill, because it is incredibly important, but oftentimes we do it at the cost of resilience, right? And the more we're imbalanced there, the more we're imbalanced between placing our attention and energy on skill and placing our attention and energy on resilience, the less tolerance for risk we have, right? Everything feels risky when you're only rolling with skill. And most of my clients, as it turns out, and I'd be curious if that's true for you or your clients, most of my clients dramatically underestimate their resilience. And there are a few ways I go about developing resilience. So one of the keys for me is developing resilience before I need it, right? Dig your well before you're thirsty. So one, like, who are your people? Who are your support people? And I'm really careful. Like I learned to be really careful with this one because I'm from a very risk averse family. So a lot of people don't consciously create the support around themselves. So they default to family and friends. And a lot of times what happens is your family and friends, they love you, they care about you, and they want you to feel better. They want to soothe you. They want to save you. If you're like me, they want to save you from yourself, but they definitely want you to feel better. And that's cool. Cause like sometimes, like you have to lick your wounds and go home and mom makes you grilled cheese and you feel better. It's awesome. But who's going to support you when you're climbing back up the mountain? Who's going to support you when you're ready to climb back up the mountain? Who's going to support you in knowing that you're powerful enough to come back from whatever loss you've experienced? You find and cultivate those people, whether that's coaches or a mastermind or a peer group or whatever. Know your people. 2, get real familiar with the past, present, and future of pain. So everybody's probably had this experience, right? You're a little kid, you're 5, 6, 7 years old, and you haven't quite grown into your feet yet. So you're running down a sidewalk one day, you trip and you fall and you skin your knee. And it hurts. And next thing you know, like the tears are flowing. You're like, oh my God, it hurts so bad. And hopefully like someone like comes out to you and like they pick you up, they carry you inside. And then they sit you in the chair and you look down and you see your knee. And this is when you see that it hurt. You see that something was hurt. This is the past of pain, right? Skinning your knee is the present of pain, but seeing that your knee has been skinned is the past. Like you see it and you're horrified. You're like, oh my God, my knee's never going to be this. Ah. And then there's the future of pain. The future of pain comes when mom or dad goes into the cabinet and breaks out that spray can of the stuff they like spray on the cut and it really burns. And you see that and those are the worst ones. Cause that's like, you're just like in the future, like, oh my God, it's going to hurt so bad. And what we don't realize is how much we do that with everything else. We don't realize how much we do that, how much we use the past, we use our memories of the past and our projections of the future as a really poor replacement for what we think is the pain of the present. Right? Staying in the moment with your pain, acknowledging what's in the past and what's projected into the future. Right? Really, really powerful. Because once we get into the past or in the future, we're in the story. We are in the story. And that story invariably can be disempowering as hell. And once we're in that disempowering story, we are not feeling resilient. We are not feeling resilient. And last but not least, being really, really intimate with the cycle of immersion and integration, which is kind of what we do at RLI, right? This is a little different. Usually we're in for 4 days. It's this 4-day deep immersion, and then we take time afterwards to integrate. And here we're immersed, integrate, immersed, integrate. Well, however you shake it out, that's how the pattern goes, right? You're immersed, you take time to integrate. And what most people forget, especially high achievers, is that not just that we need to integrate, but we probably need a little more time to integrate than we think we need, right? The amount of time we need to integrate, the amount of attention we need to place on integrating what we've learned and what we've experienced is directly proportional to both how long we've been immersed and how intensely we've been immersed. And immersion is like a rest day, right? Like Matt said in the very, very first brilliant session, rest day is where growth happens. Rest day is a training day. And that's what integration is, right? It is a training day for your resilience. So I would like to acknowledge, I've been talking for about 25 minutes. I am running out of voice. So I see that there are a lot of questions in the comments. I would love it if you have a question. I won't be able to scroll through everything, but please, please, please take yourself off of mute, jump right in, and we'll jam. What do you guys got?
Hey, Mike, it's Andrew here.
Hey, Andrew.
Thank you for a beautiful message this morning. Super timely for me. To go bankrupt 11 times or to lose all your money 11 times means, you were also at the top of the game probably, or near the top of the game almost that many times. So what's the strategy for Mike now in surviving success so that it doesn't lead to the next drop to the bottom?
What I learned about myself in that experience, because I never did really reach the top when I hit the bottom. I would say that I was at the very lowest levels when I was going broke. But what I did learn from that whole experience is how to be what in poker we call a front runner, which is to play better when you're ahead of the game, right? And for me, what that means is that is once I'm ahead, I get a little more risk averse. I can afford to pass on more chances. Early on, I played really, really aggressively, really incredibly aggressively, because I wanted to build quickly and I was willing to absorb those failures. In fact, it didn't really even feel like there was a whole lot of failure happening. It just felt like the natural vicissitudes of getting off the ground. But once I get to the top, I'm not giving up that position so easily. As a coach, I play the game for the long term. That's how I would say it. I'm not taking any actions. I'm not creating programs for the short term or for the quick buck. I'm not managing my reputation for the short term. I'm in this to create something that lasts in line with a long term, with a 25-year vision. Does that answer your question, Andrew? All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Who else has something?
I'll just mention something. This was awesome. Like I took like 2 pages of notes just in the first 15 minutes, and that was incredible. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. So much to process. You have such a calm, awesome energy. Okay, and so that's enough praise. I don't want you to. Okay,
want to get my head out the door after this.
Yeah, so good. Now you said you have a 25 year vision. I'm curious what that is and how that informs what you're doing now.
So actually, you and I spoke about this, so I'll share it with the group. But my 25-year vision is to support environmental and climate change leaders. What I want to do is I want to reverse the trend, right? And what's fantastic is that through this, we've kind of seen through COVID, we've kind of seen how that can begin to happen. And so now, what I want to do is support people support leaders in that industry and people who want to create policy in that industry to really be all in on it, right? Because this is I can see that this is not a place that we can really afford to hedge anymore. We can't really afford to take half measures. So my 25-year vision is to support leaders who want to reverse the trend in climate change. Anyone who's got something, just take yourself off mute.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Mike. Hi, this is David.
Hey, David.
I don't know if you can hear me. I posted a question about how you hedge bets, or if you hedge bets, and I'm in the financial field, and we do that frequently. But it seemed to me, listening to you, and maybe I'm totally off base, but it seems like you're hedging bets by holding back money, but being fully committed with the money that's on the table. Is that sort of what is that how you're hedging your bets, by being fully committed with what's on the table, but hedging by only betting as much as you're betting, or is there more to that, or do you hedge at all?
That is exactly it. So yeah, like the standard protocol for a poker player or for a pro poker player, say you're playing in a game that has a $100 buy-in, you would want to have 30 buy-ins in reserve to play that game. So you'd want to have $3,000. And some people are more and less conservative than that. I tended to be a little more conservative. I tended to be around the 50 to 100 buy-in flavor. And another thing that players do is that at the very, very highest levels is they do what they call like hedging in hand, where the practice is called running it twice, actually. So say there are players who are all in, right? They have all their chips at stake in a hand. Now, there's no hand that's guaranteed to win early in a hand. So what they'll do is they'll agree, if it's close to a coin flip, say it's like a 55-45 proposition, once the cards are face up and the money's all in, they'll agree to deal the community cards out twice in order to give themselves a chance to break even on the bet, rather than risk all of their money on what is essentially a coin flip. Did I explain that clearly?
How do you run it twice? I'm not, who
So the dealer at the casino. So say, for example, let me say you and I get all of our money in with a very, very similar hand, and we're very, very close at 50-50 once we see that that's the case. And before the dealer deals out the cards that we're going to share, the community cards, if we're playing a game like Texas Hold'em, right? Mm-hmm. We'll say deal them twice, which means they'll deal them once. The winner will get one half of the pot, and then they'll deal it a second time, and the winner of that will get the other half. So what it does, that's a little bit of a hedge that comes up once in a while. It probably comes up maybe once or twice a night at the very highest levels.
Yeah, but they both have to agree to that beforehand. They both have to ask for that.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'll jump. Hi, Mike. Thanks for sharing this. Super interesting as all the sessions.
Thank you.
My question to you would be, you shared so many principles with us and they all make a lot of sense. Which one's the one you're struggling with the most to really live by?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's, oh man. To be honest with you, the one I struggle the most with is walking that line between dabbling and being fully committed. Because I love, like, any of you who are familiar with the Enneagram, I am like a true blue Enneagram 7. I love trying anything. And a lot of time what that does is it creates distractions from my true commitments. So the dabbler in me, I've been, it is a practice to keep him in check.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike. It's Ro.
Hey, bro.
I absolutely love the insights. I just love the way you delivered it. And I have a question about how you get people, especially people who are already quite successful, to focus more on the opportunity cost of not doing something. So, you talked earlier about the life you're going to lose versus the life you could have created.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard sometimes to know what that is worth because you haven't seen it yet. And I think it's easy, isn't it, to risk when you have nothing to lose. So when you're just starting out, maybe you don't have a house and family and commitments, and you just have you, to compare to when you're in your 30s and 40s and you have so much more to lose. How do you get somebody to change that shift and start thinking about the possibilities and the opportunity cost of not doing something risky?
Mm. Well, you tapped into the key there, which is possibilities. So one, I want to know what the gap is between where they're at right now and what the, I guess what their biggest life is, whether that's a mission or whether it's a goal, whatever that is, like what's the gap there? And in tandem with that, like I want to tap into what I call the discomfort of comfort, because underneath comfort is extreme discomfort invariably. If you kind of think about it as like, imagine if you sat all day on the couch watching Netflix and there's a part of you that feels soothed by that and you're enjoying the half slumber you're in, and yet there are muscles in your body where blood is pooling, they're getting stiff, you're going to get up and you're going to move and you're just, oh man, my back hurts. And sometimes we create the story that, oh, my back hurts. It's not because I sat on the couch watching Netflix. It's because I'm getting old, or it's because, oh, my body is changing and there's nothing I can do about this. Or it's something outside of what we're doing. And here it's the comfort itself that's leading to the discomfort, right? The further we get into comfort, the further away we're getting from where we really want to be. Does that answer you, Ro?
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Mike. It's Heather Egginton.
Hey, Heather.
Hey. Loved your insights so far. What I was interested to know is how you took the risk to go into a different industry. I mean, and where the correlation kind of from gambling, coaching, kind of what happened for you to decide to do that?
Well, there came a point where there were a lot more reasons for me to stop playing poker than there were for me to keep playing poker. And I'll be like completely open about them. One, I didn't like the person I was becoming. I love trash talk. Trash talk is one of my guilty pleasures in life. I love hearing trash talk. I love participating in trash talk. My bucket list is to have like this a huge roast where people just talk trash on me all night for a birthday one year. And I noticed that I was kind of becoming a jerk. I didn't like that. Two, I was getting further into my relationship with my wife. Like, we'd been dating for a couple of years at that time, and I was working typically 7 at night till 7 in the morning, 4 nights a week. So that means there are 4 days a week where I'm pretty much not seeing her at all. And I didn't want to keep living my life that way. I wanted to know what other challenges were out there for me, because let's be honest, like they're like playing poker professionally, the money is good and the lifestyle can be easy, and it's not really fulfilling. Like there's something that just doesn't feel fulfilling about like sitting around a table trading chips all night. And fourth, and I got out just in time. In the U.S., regulations changed around it, so they made it really hard for us to move money around on online poker sites. So I didn't want to risk any meaningful amount of money getting hung up, getting seized, being in limbo for weeks or months or anything like that. So going into a new industry, I just kind of took a leap. I knew someone who worked for a big bank, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about hanging up poker and getting a regular job. And they like really quick, like they were like, oh my God, do we need to go to the doctor? And I was like, no, I'm serious about this. And they, and so we sat down, we had a conversation about what might be a good fit for me. And I ended up coming on to work for them as a consultant at first, and then as a full-time staffer, and I stayed there for a few years.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Heather.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Oh, so Bob, and then I didn't hear who the second person was. Was it you, Kobani?
Yeah.
All right. So Bob and then Kobani.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much for this session. I appreciate it. One thing that I just am having difficulty getting around, if we could just go back to it for a second, I think it might help me. And that's dying before the battle. Not quite around that concept yet. Can you repeat what you said?
Actually, I'd be curious about is there something specific in there that you're having trouble getting your head around?
I think the way that I think about it is, and just maybe I need just validation on the way I'm thinking about it, is that I'm not committed to the outcome. I'm dying before the battle. It's like, whether I win or lose, there is no win or losing. Let me just give it up right now. It's not the outcome that I'm into. It's just dying before the battle. I'm not quite sure if that's right, but it seems like there's something there in me that I want to know more about. Dying before the battle, it just sounds interesting.
So dying before you go into battle. Yes, there is an element of letting go of the outcome. And there is, I guess the best way to say it is that dying before you go into battle also means it is its own level of commitment, right? This is it. You're in. And you're ready for whatever outcome happens. It's not simply detachment. I mean, when we're talking about risk, there is upside and there is downside. The reason most people don't take bigger risks is because when they look at the downside, they pee themselves. They're not ready to look the downside in the eye. That's what dying before you go into battle is looking the downside in the eye and saying, yeah, I'm ready for you.
Okay, cool. I get that. When you make it to commitment, I get it.
Yeah.
I fully understand being committed. Thank you.
Thank you. Kobani.
Thanks, Mike. I wanted to touch upon the dabbling versus commitment point that you made. So how do you catch yourself when you're in that line? Like, what are the signs? And also then, how do you know that you're committing to the right thing? Like, what if you commit? As in, what if you commit just because you want to commit and you don't want to dabble, but you commit to the wrong thing?
That's a great question. So, one, I'll acknowledge that I can only dabble for so long. Dabbling is fun, and it's like sitting with a screen in your face all day, playing on your phone. Like it's stimulating, but it's draining at the same time. So when I notice that drain coming in, I know that something's happening where I'm dabbling, I'm not committed, and and I need to start examining what exactly is going on there. Now, what was the second part of your question again? There was, what if you commit to the wrong thing?
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
do you decide what to commit to?
How do
Or
I
what's your
decide what?
process? Yeah.
Well, I think so. There's something around resilience in here too, because when I think about committing to the wrong thing, I see the feeling that there's something to come back from, the feeling that something is lost, something is diminished. A superpower, I guess, I inadvertently developed over the years was being able to decommit just as easily as I commit. Right? Can I decommit from something? Am I willing? You know, we think, David Block, you'll 100% get this. Sunk cost. We think of things in life that where we decommit, we commit ourselves and then we decommit and it feels like there's still something left there. We avoid that. We avoid that sunk cost. And I just don't worry about sunk costs. If I want something, I commit to it. And if I feel like I need to decommit from it, I'm happy to do that. I want to be clear with myself that decommitting is in service of something bigger, something I want more. And it's not a matter of me having a fear around commitment. That's a really important distinction, right? Is decommitting, or is that stemming from the fear of commitment, or is it coming from me wanting to serve something even greater? Is that answering your question?
I had another question on top of that. So that
Fire
answered
away.
the question, which was the dabbling point. How do you know, what do you define as dabbling?
I don't know if I define it so much as like I know it when I feel it. Right? I know when I'm committed to something and I know when I'm not. And there's there's that sense of not being serious around something I'm in. I mean, I've started a dozen projects this year, a dozen projects easily, and 11 of them have fallen off. I screwed around with them, but they didn't feel nourishing to me, and I didn't really feel like I was all in on them. Like, I know what it feels like to be fully committed to something, and I know that feeling was not there for them. So there is like the feeling of, I guess, the absence of the feeling of being all in on something.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Mike, it's Brian.
Hey, Brian, what's up?
I would really love to hear more about your client astonishment and some of the things you do for that and have done.
So it all started with a client who lives in North Carolina, and they told me that their bucket list was to hike on the Appalachian Trail. And I thought, what do you mean you haven't done that? You live in North Carolina. You're 3 hours from the Appalachian Trail. Like, this is easy. Let's make this happen. Let's do this. And I asked my client to set aside this weekend. I drove down there and we hauled ass to the trail, and and we did it. And mind you, we also did it through a snowstorm, which I did not anticipate, but such is risk. Other ways that comes up. So confession, this is frowned on by some coaches. I don't care. I make small talk with my clients. I talk about little shit with them all the time. And the nuggets of insight that come out when their guard is down, when they don't feel like they have to be a good client, it's incredible. So I'm always mining for stuff like that, and places where we can do something fun, exciting they wouldn't try, like take a hot air balloon ride, like that has happened. I had a client who last year a full year client who, in a small talk conversation, told me about a podcast they love. And it turns out that podcast has a traveling stage show, and my cousin is one of the stars of it. And we found a date that was in town for my client, set aside an evening, went to the stage show, went backstage, met the whole cast and crew, went out drinking with the whole cast and crew, and then played the most awful, profane game of Cards Against Humanity you ever saw in your life. And but my client's never going to forget that. But all from just taking the risk of being a crappy coach and making small talk with my client.
Yeah, I love that concept because, yeah, that's so counter to what we're trained to do or what most of us do, right? So, yeah, love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, anyone else have anything? Take yourself off mute if you do.
I just want to share something really quick, because another thing that was difficult, but I think it just hit me when you were just talking about astonishment, is being committed with your clients as much as they're committed, right? You can't be any more committed. And I'm like, okay, how do I do that? And it just hit me that, because I have clients who want to do astonishing things, and I'll commit to be with them when they're doing it. And boy, does that motivate the hell out of them. Like if they're going to give a speech somewhere, I'll be there wherever it is in the world. And it's taken me some great places. And I didn't realize, I mean, I just do that because it's just added commitment, right? That's how much I believe in your dream. I'll be there when it's happening. So if you're going to run a marathon, I'll be there at the beginning line, at the end line, and I'll be there with you. And I've done it. And now I know what you mean by being just as committed. That's how I do that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Bob.
Well, when you said you take them to the Appalachian Trail, I said, absolutely, I would take them there. Absolutely.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, right. I make lunch and we'll go, a whole thing. Yeah, that was great. Thank you. I couldn't figure it out before when you said it, but now I got it.
Awesome. Glad it clicked for you, man. All right. Anyone else?
Mike, this is Michael.
Hey, Michael.
Thank you for giving me permission to be a crappy coach and do small talk. I'm brand new to this, only about 30 days in, and my career so far has been small talk, obviously in the insurance industry, but the small talk is what has created the relationships and conversations and got us started. And to be able to just continue that is just brilliant. I got to work on it, but I really appreciate it. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ernest.
No, you go ahead.
All right. Thanks. I loved what you said about, well, hell, I love the whole talk, but I love what you said about skill and resilience. And do you see a distinction around skill and resilience, but also skill and resourcefulness? Or do you see those things the same thing?
I'd never really thought about that, but it kind of sounds like a third pillar to me. Yeah, there's like resourcefulness in a way is its own skill. It's sort of like I guess you would call it a meta skill, and yeah, it definitely stands on its own. That is a great insight, and thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna spend some time exploring that.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you. Ernest, you're up, man.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thanks again for putting this on. This was awesome. I think I see a lot of nodding heads on my screen. So I just want to recognize what you just shared with us was amazing and super awesome. So I just wanted to thank you.
Rock on. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that so much. That means a lot to hear.
I'm curious, Mike, what's your next risk?
Lord, I can't premeditate them. They just come through me, man.
World Series of Coaching. Can you start the World Series of Coaching?
Oh my goodness. That sounds exciting and dangerous. The thing that's most terrifying to me is how many times I would hear the word resonate during that.
A little edgy, if you will.
DTK World Series of Trash Talk. Do not challenge me, friend. Do not. That can be Zoom sketch comedy right there.
Yeah. Mike, what struck me, I don't know if you can hear me. What struck me is how calm and centered you were about talking about risk. That you were very congruent about a very incongruent conversation. To be that present in understanding risk was very powerful for me to get how you approached it, that there was nothing impulsive about it. You're very grounded and present as you examine and take and fully commit. And that's a powerful lesson in and of itself. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, David. And I want to share, there's another story behind that, and I don't have the time to share the full story, but in a nutshell, part of that is formed by having been in even higher risk situations and having the benefit of 15 to 20 years of hindsight behind it. The first incident where I became really present to what extraordinarily high risk was, I was on a cross country or not cross country, but on a drive from Philly to Denver, and I was playing pool in a pool room just outside of Kansas City, and afterward I got held up at gunpoint by a guy who wouldn't speak to me. Wouldn't tell, I had no idea what the man wanted other than to have a gun in my face. And I'd never really faced a meaningful risk in my life like that until that point. I'd taken little risks, but I didn't know what it really meant to have everything at risk. And things come into perspective when you have a revolver 18 inches from your forehead, remarkably quickly. So I don't have the time to share the whole story, and that really has formed my ability to perceive what really is a risk, because being on the brink like that, a lot of other stuff seems small. So, and thank you for sharing your reflection also, David. I really appreciate that. Is anyone else going once, going twice? Thank you all so much for being here. Take yourselves off of mute. It's rock. I appreciate it. Last one.
Better than I thought it would be. Love you, man.
Crap, Sauna's here. Sauna, I'm so happy to see that you're here.
Absolutely brilliant, Mike. Thank you,
Mike.
So much.
It was.
Thank you.
It was very meaningful, Mike. Really
Go
appreciate it.
Yep. Mike, thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome. I hope to stay connected.
You're a star, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.